Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. In studio with us this morning, Professor Peter Kagwanja, Professor Maxwell Miawa, Professor Lukwea Tuole and Ahmed Hashi with us here this morning on Daybreak to talk about campaign financing, the question of ethnicity and the narratives set to drive the 2027 elections, plus the ethics that apparently lacks deep within the political gallery. Yes, Ahmed, you have a point.
I believe that, this is an exchange between the public and us. Is very important for us to really accept that we are at the end of something and at the beginning of something new. The president, during his campaign, went to the people of Kenya and said that he was going to do a bottom-up. So he went down to the engine room of the society and scraped at the class differences that we had. So he wanted to empower the poor. He wanted to empower the Mamamboga. This discourse that was there was about empowering the overwhelming majority of Kenyans who are in the underclass and the economy is not working for. That's why you had these projects on the telephone about loans and things like this, which have all collapsed. Now, when you bring out the class tensions in a society, or the class differences, there are ethnic differences, there are class differences, there are generational issues. There's so many isms that are involved in the social relations of our people. But the person responsible for this furnace that we have now is the president, because he has not delivered on the fundamental political and economic question of Kenya since independence. From the day we got independence was about the farms in the White Highlands, what's so-called the White Highlands, about the civil rights in northern Kenya, about all these issues have now been triggered by the president and has been taken in, as my learned friend of the writer said, given the constitution that we struggle for. And when they saw this constitution, and I call these children Kibaki's kids, they just simply saw that this is they weaponized the constitution, if I can use a word, by saying that, this constitution grants us certain rights, and these rights are not there. And the person who brought out these issues was the president. Now, I think that we are going to be in much more difficult situation before 2027, before the elections. I'm even, in my mind, I'm questioning whether we're going to have a peaceful election. Because I was there in 2007, I was the spokesman for the Orange Democratic Movement and the chief strategist of the party. I am beginning to smell what the state is thinking. The state thinks in very conservative ways. It does not think outside the box. It will stand up to three things. It will say we are going to protect property, we are going to protect people, and that is the responsibility of the government. The responsibility of the government, number one, is to uphold the Constitution of Kenya. That is its number one responsibility. Yeah. And if it upholds the Constitution of Kenya and says that this is the path that we're going to take, then I believe that we will have a peaceful transition of power in this country. But if the president himself stands up and says that he should shoot people in the legs, and that that he will protect property and persons, that is the language of a right-wing Manichaeist who wants to stay in power in a complete and utter way. And I think it is very important for us here, who have the privilege of understanding the lexicon and the alphabet soup of how government functions, to expose it to the people of this country and say, no, for 50 years we have stood by while there was a police state in this country. We are not going to turn the clock back, and that's where we stand.
Ahmed, then yes.
No. I think we're going to have a peaceful election. Yeah. I think we will have a result from that election, and I think whatever that result will be, the people of Kenya will accept it. This is what I think. Yeah. The first 6 chapters of our Constitution do not talk about the politicians. The first 6 chapters of our Constitution talk about us.
Yeah. The people.
Yeah. We, the people. We give ourselves certain rights, and the Bill of Rights is among those first 6 chapters of the Constitution, and how we want to manage the heritage that we have been given by our forefathers on behalf of our children. So the people of Kenya, the vast majority of the people of Kenya, have read those first 6 chapters. They have internalized them. They have accepted them as the things that are real. And there's nobody that's going to change that. So the elections are part of the things that we have given ourselves. It's part of the rights we have given ourselves to decide who's going to take what responsibilities on our behalf. And the people, mostly the young people, believe that. The young people, when they're making their points today, they're not violent. They don't threaten anyone. They come out and they say, this is what we expect of our leadership. This is what we expect of the people we give responsibilities in this country. They don't go to beat them up. They tell them. And so I'm seeing an election that's coming that will be absolutely peaceful, but that will be a true expression of the will of the people of this country.
Okay. Yeah. And Professor Maxwell, certainly then, whilst Ahmed and Professor Lukoe point that out, is it not concerning when members of the political establishment, of course, notwithstanding their political affiliation or subscription, talk about election rigging, talk about ballot stuffing, and talking about terms, saying that we have to go for 2 terms because that has been the tradition. But ideally, in a democratic state like ours, which is a constitutional democracy, that power belongs to the people and it's decided by them in an election.
So I think the one crucial fact Kenyans have to contend with is that, I mean, there is always the conversation there that elections is a turning point for a country. For our country, it's completely a different thing altogether, from whichever political divide you sit in. Our elections have always been a burning point because our elections are characterized by ethnic polarization. That is usually at the very heart of our elections. But I think going forward, I've had conversations here about, the next 2027 election being about democracy versus tyranny and so forth. But I think really political discourses change really, really fast. One cannot really predict that this is going to be the next election. In fact, in my view, I think the next election is going to be the conversation about political or economic inclusion or inclusivity generally versus polarization, political polarization, given what is already going on here. Another thing about our elections, why these conversations about, we will make who becomes president or we will make who become a one-term president, is that, and I think Isaac Hassan has written about this, the referee of a dirty game. And in that book, that's how he characterizes elections generally in Kenya. In that book, he says, whereas the reality is that all cadres of elections are always very peaceful, not characterized by any irregularities. But how is it that it's only at the presidential level where we have the highest contest and protestation and conflict? Because, and as he says that individual destiny is to be, the president takes responsibility for individual's destiny, economic status of each and every other person. And I think that's really conceptually wrong. Each and every person is responsible for his own economic destiny. What the government can do, and the government, remember, exists in perpetuity. Yeah. The government is not President William Ruto, the government is not Uhuru Kenyatta. These are individuals who will come and go. The government's responsibility is to create an enabling environment. But the poverty mindset that Kenyans still have, that everything they want to blame on the president, is that they take their own circumstances, their failures and even successes, and attribute it to what the government does. That's why Hashim talks, every time he talks, he mentions President Ruto in this conversation. Yeah. Because he wants to blame everything that goes wrong to a particular individual, to a particular government. The government's role and responsibility is to create an enabling environment, ensure that there is education, with the economic struggles that we may have. Okay. Ensure that there's a favorable environment in which health or health facilities can be, can be improved and made better. Ensure that there's infrastructure that enables our people to grow. Yeah. So let us not associate every individual failure, every circumstances to a political establishment. Political establishments come and go. Governments come or exist in perpetuity. And governments, by the way, create policies you know, including a political environment where he can exercise his political rights.
Yeah. Yes, Prof.
I think he's misteaching the society. It's good to be morally right. We have 3 segments in what you can call a society. One is the society, the people. That's why the state in Somalia collapsed, but Somalia continued to exist because the people are there. And they are organized in their own way, the Hawiyas, the Darods and all, and they have their own structure of doing things. Society is in perpetuity. The second one that is in perpetuity is the state, as described by the Constitution. It doesn't change much. We'll always have a president here, because that's what we have, until we change. We'll always have a parliament. We'll always have, that is the state. Government is a group of gangs, people who gang together in a party, because party means being party to something. So you gang together, but in order to market yourselves, you give us a manifesto, and we look at it as a people, you know, because we own the land. We are the society, we are the state.
And the source of sovereignty.
And we are the source of the sovereignty. So we look at what you present to us, and we give you an opportunity for a whole year to run around the country to sell to us. So William Ruto was elected in this country legitimately, and I've said that again and again. Why? Because he marketed his ideas in one of the most robust campaigns. Now we come to governing. Governments exist in Kenya for 5 years, and you judge each government by how it performs. As a country, earlier on in this century, we defined for ourselves a vision that we want our society and our state to have reached, so that our people, who are the people, will have attained that. That's how we came with Vision 2030. Vision 2030 is divided into chunks, and it is given to each government to implement. People are saying Kibaki implemented his part well. People are saying Uhuru implemented his part, but there are issues here and there, particularly about the increasing poverty, which is why there was discordance towards his end. So that's Uhuru. People are saying Ruto has not ruled well. Up to this, the 3 points. He still has 2 years. He still has 2 years and can turn the tide. So governments come and go. People are there and the state is there. People can change the structure of the state through either referendums or through a constitutional change, like we did, change from the Elizabethan constitution now to the popular democratic constitution. And therefore, let's not be clear. Every government is judged, and when it performs well, it is re-elected. It can be re-elected for another period. If it does not do well, it is not elected. That's the whole thing.
And Prof, when you talk about the juxtaposing of Kibaki's reign and the Uhuruto who came to power in 2013,
yes.
Did we then, as then the American Undersecretary pointed out, the choices have consequences tag, at the expense of Uhuru and Ruto, so much wanting to free themselves from the ICC tag of crimes against humanity, then ended up with them and the misrule thereafter for 10 years, and now what you talked about with President William Ruto's 2 years, who you said he is, well, not within the periphery of good governance.
Let's put it this way, and let's tell Kenyans frankly. I was the CEO of the Constitution. I read the campaign. I was the strategist and the manager of the campaign, the referendum. Hashi and others were championing those values. So this was a very corrective effort. It is on record. The team that came to implement the Constitution is not the same team that favored the Constitution. That will go down in history. That this is a revolution which is being executed by anti-revolutions. And that is very clear. Let's put it in mind. Whether you're talking about Uhuru Kenyatta, I know the effort we went to convince Uhuru to be on Kibaki's side. It was a huge effort. And it came after June. Remember, we started the campaign somewhere in January. It came after June. But when Uhuru went, he supported that. But for Ruto and the team, they never bought into the idea right? And it was a huge struggle, even agreeing on the counties as they are today, and so on. But that's water under the bridge.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is, as it stands now, it may not be necessarily tyranny versus democracy.
Yeah.
It's actually people versus tyrants. This is it. Because I think Kenyans are fed up with a situation where we have a good constitution and it cannot be implemented.
Yeah.
So the greatest failure of this government is inability to implement a constitution that is written. And where Kenyan people went to great lengths to put into a constitutions things that are normally not put in constitutions. Constitutions are usually small documents. But we knew that there might be a chance that somebody might interpret ambiguity in some of these. And therefore, we wrote things into the constitution for people to understand. Up to this age, they cannot understand.
If I can just, I want to, you know, whales sing because they have a song. So that's a line in Moby Dick. I blame the president. He's right. The reason I blame the president.
For everything?
President came to...
Even for sunshine.
I have a right to the response. The president came into power on the wave of class distinctions in this society. And I've repeatedly said that he's the one who brought about these class distinctions. He said, the Mamamboga, all these fellows, come vote for me and I'll change your lives. And that didn't happen. We're not an American economy, we're not a European economy, we're a post-colonial economy with unequal distribution, uneven economies, and the income inequalities is high and low. Therefore, the state can't be an actor outside in the perimeter saying, you citizens go and create your kiosks and make money. The state is an active partner, and maybe, in fact, the leading partner in the economy, the leading person in trying to explain and develop and invest in an economy that will produce jobs. China and the Pacific countries and all the other modern countries that have emerged from the post-colonial system are an example of the state and market and how it runs. This is an entirely different subject. But on the matter of the leadership of the country, if I can call it that, one of the closest allies of the president in Wajir yesterday, when we were crafting this women representative in the constitution, somewhere up there, we were hoping that women would work for children, their women's rights, so that they be included in the nation being that we're in. The woman representative from Wajir, Ms. Jeho, who happens to be my cousin, an outrageous statement in Wajir the other day, where she said that we're going to rig the elections. Now, when I'm blaming the president, and I'm blaming the Internal Security Minister, and I'm blaming Mr. Duale, I am blaming them because these are cohorts of the president, and they are speaking on the line of the president, and they're speaking about a country that is in rebellion against the president. This country has said Ruto must go. The reason they're saying that Ruto must go is because Ms. Ruto cannot govern this country. He's been unable to push the agenda of the people forward. He has even brought a broad-based government with Mr. Odinga so that he can try and prop up a government that's not being able to be propped up. So I think we should be able to tell this country in a very open way, a very clear way, in a very brave way, what is happening in this country, and not dilly-dally on the edges and say, oh, this might not be the case. It's not the case. We're in the deepest recession in this country since independence. Political leadership in this country has failed. Yesterday, they buried Bridget Njoki. Many people have died. Abductions have been going on in this country. President himself apologized for the abductions, taking responsibility for it, to say it must stop. The Sabasaba rebellion that happened, you could see the bedlam that's going on in this country. We want leadership, and there's nothing wrong with Hashi or Lukoye or my learned friend from my alma mater and the professor to say, we want leadership in this country so that we do not go the way of Sudan, we don't go the way of Somalia, we don't go the way of South Sudan. And if we don't speak out now, Anne Frank said they came for the butcher, no one spoke up. They came for the grocer, no one spoke up. They came for the teacher, no one spoke up. And then when they came for Anne Frank, there was nobody else to speak for Anne Frank.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will be the other voice that says what is happening in Kenya today is evidence that the Constitution is working. it is evidence that the Constitution is working.
Yeah, it's a good argument.
The fact that we can sit here and have this conversation about the government and about the people means the Constitution is working. There was a time that we couldn't do this. There was a time that when we had this conversation and left this room, nobody would know where we would go.
We paid a price to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I will give that. The second thing I would like to say is that I will not agree that the government of President Ruto has failed. I will not outrightly agree in the sense that, you know, the guy was elected 2 years ago. Yeah. And, you know, there are ways in which you can argue that he's still finding his footing.
His footing.
And that we expect way more of this government than any other generation has expected of their government.
Yep.
I would give it that. And the third thing then that I would say is that, Hashi is right, that people in government should never, ever make suggestions that the government will engage in illegality, that the government will break the law, that we will stuff ballots, that we will, you know, rig elections and so on. Making those kinds of suggestions create a certain perception, and they're impeachable statements, in my view. People who say things like those should not hold public office. They should be removed. And those are the kinds of leadership that one would expect the president and the leadership to take. That if somebody engages in blatant illegalities and unconstitutional stuff, they should be released from government and allowed to go and engage in their private business and so on.
And Prof, do you agree with Professor Kagwanja, before you go to Professor Maxwell, that the content of our Katiba, which outlines how we should govern ourselves, largely emanates from the conduct of the political establishment in the past, and therefore all these safeguards and guardrails around it?
Yeah, I would fully agree. And I agree also that, you know, constitutions are not meant to legislate the length of grass on the lawns of State House. But our constitution practically does that, like says, this is what you will do on Monday, this is what you'll do on Tuesday, this is what you'll do on Wednesday, and so on. Constitution shouldn't go that far. But our constitution goes that far because historically, from independence, we had constitutions that were disregarded, consistently disregarded. And we thought, and this constitution was written to a large extent to tie the hands of the people that we gave responsibilities to manage our resources. The goal was to tie their hands so that they manage our resources only in certain ways and not in others. And this is a product of our history, where we had leaders who were thieves, where we had leaders who were murderers, where we had leaders who would detain people who were against them, where we had leaders who would disregard the law and do things, and we had leaders who were the law. And this constitution is a reaction to that history that says we will never again have a leader who is the law. We will never again have the date of the election as a secret weapon. We will never again have a leader who can own parliament, a leader who can own the judiciary, a leader who can own public office and use those as tokens to give to the people who will support him and who will be behind him. This is a reaction to that history.
And Professor Maxwell, Prof points out also the question of tokenism, and we have seen that happen in the country to keep the young people in perpetual continuity of poverty and the larger extent inequality among the populations. Is campaign financing rather turning out to be a problem, and how do you think the new IBC and of course Parliament can handle this matter, given how expensive our elections are?
Yes, I'll come to the question of tokenism in our electoral politics or our electoral governance, but I think I wanted to react to something that Professor Kagwanja said. I think the fundamental mistake that people do is that when you have a document called a constitution, it is self-implementing, self-effecting. Constitution making does not end with the promulgation of the constitution, and this is what my statement. Willy Mutunga wrote, constitution making does not end with the promulgation. It begins with the implementation. Constitutional conversations, particularly surrounding governance or governance questions, will always exist 200 years from now, 100 years from now, 50 years after the promulgation of the Constitution. And actually, our Constitution is still very, very young, that when we have these governance questions on how people interpret, particularly how election is supposed to be conducted, individual utterances, like who will be rigged into office, who will become one term, who will become half term, who needs to go home, those tell you that those are questions, critical questions, or questions on national discourses of governance. Okay? It means that we still have not agreed on the proper interpretation on particular aspects of our governance. That's why in the United States of America, from 1950s up to now, we're still having conversation about who is to repeal Roe versus Wade or not. People still having interpretation on what is the proper province of presidential immunity. These are constitutional questions. They cannot be settled or they cannot be concretized within 10 or 20 years after the Constitution has been promulgated. Now, to the second question of electoral management, these are all questions of electoral governance. You know, election financing, questions to do with election management, these are all questions of electoral governance. And I think the reason why Parliament has always dithered on passing legislation, proper legislation or regulation on electoral governance is that these are monkeys really presiding over mantas of the forest. So it's little surprising that we do not have a proper law or regulation on how to govern tokenism in politics, how to pay, you know, how to do your own campaigns, what amount of money to use. Now, the real blame doesn't lie in individual leaders. The real blame lies in Parliament, the inability of Parliament to pass. And that discussion has always been there. It is not a new discussion. It has been there since 2010. You know, campaign financing. How much can an individual use? What are the sources? How much can that money be used? And so forth. So I think the blame squarely lies in Parliament. This is the time that IBC can sit down and come up with proper regulation. The law is there. Come up with proper regulation to govern, and this is the most sober time. If Parliament refuses to pass this legislation, probably the people of Kenya can start thinking of other ways in which we can manage campaign finance.
Yeah, yes, and I'll come to you, Ahmed. And Prof, you have mentioned the creation of the vast array of institutions that were born out of Katiba. And Parliament certainly is one of the most important, given the powers that have been vested therein by the people, including the powers to impeach a sitting president. But ideally, it's what the young people are pointing out, which is very pertinent, is it that Parliament isn't working for the Kenyan people. And then how do they distance equally themselves from, or delink themselves from that problem when it's the same people who donate the mandate to those people who are in Parliament? How do you address this double crisis facing the Kenyan society?
Let me start by qualifying what I meant by the Ruto's administration has failed. We actually talk about administration because these are administrations. And they are governed by what they promised the country. I agree with Professor Okoye that it is too early to make that assertive conclusion that he has failed. I believe from the deal that President William Ruto has gotten from China to build a highway from Nairobi all the way to Maraba, to build a railway from Naivasha now to Maraba, and another one from Rironi, from Muthaiga to all the way up to the deep of Gatondo, and the Nithi bridges and all that. If all that happens within the next 2 years, I can tell you just a certain percentage of perception may change from an economic perspective. And remember, Ruto's mandate was an economic mandate. Kibaki's mandate, when he came to power, he had three things. One, constitution, corruption, and economy. For Kibaki, the constitution was really imperative. Economy, we knew it would struggle. Now, for Ruto, if you remember the debate between him and Uhuru Kenyatta during the election, Uhuru would stand up as a president and say, this is a constitutional moment, because we were working with Raila Odinga on IEBC, on BBI. And therefore, for him, it was a constitutional moment to put the constitution straight. Now, for Ruto, he was unequivocal. He was this is an economic moment. And when he got people like David D. and others, he made his point very clear that even the people ahead of my campaign are economists. That's it. So I concluded at a certain stage in some of our conversations that this is not about who is going to oppose Ruto in 2027. It is not whether it's Hashi or Kagwanja or Okoye, Professor. It is Ruto versus the economy, because that is what he promised to put in power. And when people judge that he has not done well in the economy, then his mandate can be withdrawn by the people. I agree again about the debate we are having today. I was here, I was here about 30 years ago when I was writing Killing the Vote, which was about how do you make sense of the violence that was going on 1992, 1997. So I published for the Kenya Human Rights Commission the book Killing the Vote. And we square blamed the government, but we also understood that it was trying to hide behind the curtains and does these things informally. Therefore, the ethnic clashes, so tribal clashes, and all those prefixes that were used to explain the corruption, the violence. Now, today, the mandate of Ruto remains. It is economy. Yeah. But primarily, he was the second president after Uhuru Kenyatta tasked with the implementation of the spirit and letter of this constitution. Okay. So he'll be judged as to whether that will happen. So what Ashe was saying about abductions, about killings, we've had more public killings. Killings have always been there, from Pio Gamapinto to all those. They have always been there in the regimes. But we've never had public and palpable sense of death in our public. This is the first time people are saying, it is. When people walk in clutches, in those cartoons, and they are dramatizing a whole nation that has been ripped by bullets on their legs. Right. What they are saying is that death is becoming a new thing. So what is the big point we're making? There is still time for Ruto and the government to come back and understand what the people of Kenya want. But there's also a second scenario where they can decide that they want to take us back to Kano days, when people, they can make that decision. Obviously, there will be response from the public, but if they make the decision as the government that is in power, that's not upon us. Yeah. So it's upon them to read the spirit and the letter of the Constitution and the vision Kenyans have of their present and their future. Yeah, and Prof, before I come to Ahmed and Professor Lukoe, when you talk about the constitutional moment that President Kenyatta advocated for, certainly he has a tainted record on that part, is it? Because it's very difficult to delink President Kenyatta and his successor, President William Ruto, the current president, because the Court of Appeal, in its wisdom, in the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, the BBI, said this was no ordinary amendment, but an attempt to dismember the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya in the judgment it issued. And also further went on to say that the courts are alive to the attempts by the political class in encroaching into the constitutional space. Yeah. Therefore, we are having a wholesale problem, is it, in two Kanu boys who came to power in 2013 and certainly embarked on a spree of a culture of unconstitutionalism and failure to live by the principles of good governance. I think what we are experiencing is all these lexicons we are using about the Jubilee and Kenya Kwanza, or what he calls Kenya Kwisha. So all these are things. We are experiencing a continuity of Jubilee A and Jubilee B. The ideas have not changed fundamentally. Only the depth of them have changed. Just the depth, not the difference. Yeah. You can see a clear distinction between what was there before 2012, 2013, and what was there between 2002. Kibaki had governed using the old constitution. Let's be clear about that. He never governed using the new constitution. So all the freedoms we are talking about, all the achievements we are talking about, were made using the same constitution that Moi is accused of having violated. Ahmed, I'll come to you. So let me finish, Ahmed. So there is a role of the person in interpreting what his or her people want. Kibaki interpreted Kenyans as a country that needed freedoms, that needed economic prosperity, and that needed a sense of equality. He had his own weaknesses. We know them. And he tried as much as he could. The two regimes that have come up, for Uhuru, it was more about the economy It was more about, the people, togetherness, unity, particularly after 2017. The concept of unity became so prominent in his unity at all cost. Doesn't matter whether it's a unity of gangs or planning to rob a bank.
Yeah.
But the current government was put into the office because this is what the people wanted. We wanted you to focus on the economy, because if we have a good economy, then everything else can be done, including implementing our constitution.
All right.
So that is why 2027 is about Ruto versus the economy.
Okay.
It doesn't matter whether it's Kalonzo or it's whoever it is. It's Ruto versus the economy.
Okay. Yes,
I think
no, it's my
turn. It's your turn.
I think that there's the CLR James, a great Trinidadian thinker, coined this phrase, and he says, confusion made worse confounded. I don't think we should cover up this administration with essentialism statements that say, they're in power only for 2 years and the country is on the brink of a disaster. I mean, that's appalling. I put it to my learned friend on the right, that we have a moral responsibility to tell the people of this country the truth. That's the role of the intellectual, particularly a clinical psychologist who understands the madness in the society. I think it's appalling. I'm doing it with utmost respect.
I'm just saying, let's not use madness lightly.
I think
kindly.
I think we need to look at this country and say to the people of this country that we're going to a very bad place, and that is our role. In this country, I'm a politician and a thinker in this country, and I look at the facts of this country, and the number one fact is that we've had nearly 200 people who are dead. We're burying our children. The state is on the streets with the citizens. There was a revolution the other day. Just the other day, we nearly overturned the government. We would have had a Bangladeshi situation in this country. What are we talking about when we say that he's here just for 2 years or 3 years and he still hasn't found his feet? That's nonsense. This country is in trouble. And unless we stand up and demand that it returns a direction, it will not. There's a great thinker in Ghana. Ghana is leading Africa in thinking. There's a guy called Kwame Anthony Appiah, who is writing about political economy today. And Anthony's spoken about what is called a moral outrage. When there is this kind of moral depravity in your society, then there is a counter-hegemony. Remember my learned friend who was speaking about counter-hegemony. Counter-hegemony is to stand up and say, we have struggled for 50 years, myself and the rest of the men here, for a rule of law. And the Constitution and our civil and political rights. I remember a time when we were just, they could come in here and just take us. So it's very important for us to explain to the public that the economy has virtually collapsed. That's number one. That the promises of the administration from day one have failed. This is another fact. That the response of the citizen for peaceful protest in the society has been met with a dint of police action and shootings and killings. That's another fact. The protesters went into their National Assembly. They were crouching down with machine guns, submachine guns, and shooting them. Today we are burying a 12-year-old. What is it that in 2 years that the president has not done, or 3 years that he's going to do in the next 2 years? If he was going to do something nice, we would have seen the contours of it. Where are the contours of this development that we need?
Yes, Prof.
No, I want to agree that how we are handling dissent is completely wrong. And we have said here before that you will not convince this country that you're doing the right thing using bullets and tear gas. And that if you allowed people to express themselves freely, you'd probably be in a better place as leadership. I fully agree, and I think police and government and people who hold the monopoly of violence ought to use that judiciously and allow people to express themselves. I think the fundamental problem over the past 15 years has been that we got new costumes And the wearers of those costumes are the same old people.
Monkeys.
So we have KANU, the KANU remnants attempting to implement a new constitution that was anti-KANU. This is the biggest problem. Yeah. The big political players in this country are KANU offspring.
Hawks.
Yeah, and KANU was a repressive regime. Yeah. KANU was lived on the principle that its leader was the law. The leader of KANU made law. In his sleep, when he woke up, when he was walking on the roadside, he would make law. And that was KANU. The new constitution is anti-KANU. It says you don't make law when you're asleep. You don't make law on the roadside. You don't decide things on your own. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the political leadership in this country are KANU offspring. And this is a problem. And it is difficult to get a culture change in the mind of a KANU hawk and say, listen, you have to actually listen to the people when you're doing these things, because it is written in the Constitution.
Because they were used to speaking to the people.
Yeah, they were used to tell the people what to do. And there was even a Ministry of National Guidance and stuff like that, you know, guiding people, you know, listen, guys.
Oh, William.
Yeah. You remember. And so this is a problem. And the organizing principle of the KANU hierarchy was ethnicity, was tribalism. It was about, when you look at the people, you try to decipher which tribe does this person come from and which tribe does this person come from, so that you can then weaponize their tribe and use that to your advantage. So that is the core organizing principle of KANUism. You will notice that in the current political elite, that hasn't gone away. They still struggle with the idea that people can organize in a frame that is not ethnic, in a frame that is not tribalist. So they are looking at the young people on the streets and saying, which tribe do they come from? And then saying, we have figured this out.
That's true. Yeah, that's actually correct.
Let us say that these guys are from this particular tribe, and then let us turn everybody against that tribe.
Absolutely.
And then we will win. It's not working.
It's not working.
Because the era of KANUism
is dead.
Died 15 years ago when we gave ourselves a new constitution. And finally, I would say, it is true indeed that we're in a bad place. We're in a bad place as a country. There's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of pain. And a responsible government will listen to the cries of those people who are saying we're in a bad place and attempt to help them fix the situation. And the reason I say that this current administration has time to do that is that they do have time to do that. They do have time to... last year, when the young people invaded Parliament and stopped the budget-making process, and for the first time in our history, we did not have a budget to implement...
Finance bill.
The finance bill. We thought that might have been a turning point. That might have been a time when we say, hey, listen, things have actually changed, and this is the evidence of it. And we should start listening more to the people and doing the things that the people are asking us to do. And what the young people are asking us to do, I haven't had a single protester saying, I want to be president. I haven't had a single protester saying, I want to be a member of parliament for Kamukunji. I've had them say, we want justice. I've had them saying we want the economy to work for me.
You presume that they want the job.
Yeah. They do not necessarily want the job. They want the system. They want the system to work.
Yes.
For them.
For them. They want a health system that works. They want an education system that works. They want an economy that works for them.
Yes.
This is
it, Professor Maxwell.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me respond to what everyone else
said. You can respond to what your cousins have said.
or tell us something new.
Yes.
Which is something new I'm going to tell, particularly Professor Peter.
Tell me something new.
Let him speak.
The question of romanticization and sensationalization, yes, whatever that is, of criticisms of political administration, not governments. You know, from 2002 when I started watching TV, every time the government or the political administration was changing, Peter Kagwanja was always on national television, and very early in the morning. And his narrative was always pro-government. You know, it was pro-Kibaki government. Even at a time when Kibaki's government was so discredited, Peter Kagwanja was always there. When Uhuru's government was so discredited, his rating to a solo, Peter Kagwanja was always there. This is the first time that Peter Kagwanja is saying that in the next election, it's going to be William Ruto versus the economy. And I like that particular discourse, because actually William Ruto was elected on the platform of economic transformation of a country. So he has to be very, very careful how he looks at this, the perspective from which he looks at these political administrations. And I think Peter Kagwanja has not changed much. The only change that has happened is that at least President Uhuru Kenyatta and Kibaki are not in government now. It is somebody else sitting on that position. Economic transformation, if he was an economist, he would know this, does not take place overnight. Actually, every other president, Trump has made that conversation. Obama has also made that conversation. Economic transformation cannot happen in 5 years. Economic transformation cannot happen in 5 years. Let me give you a very good example that I've been on this TV and I've said it. 20 years ago, if you do your research, China was only controlling 8% of global economic industrial production. 20 years later, it is controlling, some people say 60%. In fact, Chinese statistics say 60%. Global statistics say 30%. What does that tell you? So
that was after joining the World Trade Organization?
Yes. What does that tell you? Economic transformation, because he's judging other presidents harshly, sensationally, and others.
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah. Wait.
Let me explain. Let me explain. We have to be very careful how we look at political administrations. Surely, the government, this administration has been in office only for 2.5 years. Even if one was to transform this economy, how would it happen with all the baggages that were inherited? And by the way, Kibaki almost lost election in the first term. The reason why Kibaki was losing election in the first term was because of exclusion, ethnic exclusion and other factors. It was only after Kibaki left power, that was 10 years later, that we could see these great economic transformations and development. It was way after. Okay. So I think we have to be very careful how we judge political administration.
We get what you're saying now.
Okay. And it is a good conversation. If the discourse in 2027 is about Ruto versus the economy, so be it. But they should give us better economic ideas. Yeah. How is it that those economic ideas was not there in the 20 years that...
No, that's not 100% true.
Okay. Just wait. We'll respond.
So, Prof will respond to that.
It's not 100% true.
Maxwell is right. Yeah. That in public, much of the public there, I was, during Moi's time, I think the only president who invited me for breakfast in State House was...
He did?
Well, Moi, yes.
That was after the special branch followed I
even remember, and I went there with Michael Sialai, the clerk, the National Assembly. He's the one, because I didn't know the ways of the House. So he invited me for breakfast as a child. I was in my 20s.
Okay.
And we went on and on. So Kibaki came. I basically defended him. And Uhuru came, I defended him. And Ruto, I defended him. You remember in our conversation in KTN, I'm the one who said Ruto has won this election fair and square. and there were different opinions. Let me tell you the difference, Professor Maxwell, because we are now elders and young people are listening to us and watching us. So you need to have things straight. I am not in the government. Under Kibaki, I would tell them off. And I would even write papers. If that time comes, that year rule comes, I can show you the papers that I criticized them. Actually, when I came from South Africa, I remember Joe and Joy telling me, Professor Kagwanja, we have systems, we have committees that meet, we have institutions that make decisions. So don't tell us what we are going to do. Tell us what we are doing wrong. So they were ready to listen to what was going wrong. And my specialty became that I am saying what they are not doing right. So that was the position. And therefore, today, I cannot keep quiet, and Maxwell is not listening to me. I'll say it for the sake of posterity. So I have answered your question that if this advice was given in confidence and it is being implemented on, I would not really utter it that way. But let's say now, things have gone, and I thought I was going to a proud professor, because I think what he said would have summed up what we have been saying this morning. If nothing else, what he has said in his last statement is what summarizes this. We are looking at the government of President William Ruto objectively. Mm-hmm. He is not inventing a wheel. Mm-hmm. He is the third implementer of Vision 2030. So from an economic perspective, he didn't even need to do anything. He also has a God-ordained responsibility which he might lose in 2027. the God ordained is to chart the future of this republic up to 2063. Because after 2030, I mean, Vision 2030 is expiring in the middle of the next term after 2027, right? And therefore, by this time, we should have started talking about what Vision 2063 look like. We have not even started that way. You go to pick priorities, because we also, I mean, there's nothing else we do in this country except studying and looking, comparing ideas. There's no sensitivity here or sensationalization. Yeah. It is about looking at what is happening. Okay. Now, you make a decision whether you want to turn Kenya into like, for example, a known-as market in regard to housing or a renters market. This is a choice you make. In South Africa, they chose it's a known-as market. So they effected a policy that ensured that people would prefer to own houses than to rent houses. Yeah. Here, we continue with renters house, I mean, policy, and you are building more and more houses to assist people. I mean, wrong policies are wrong policies. Okay. And there's nothing you can say.
So it's my turn.
It's a debate about policies.
Yeah. The secret of getting ahead.
Yeah, and when was the breakfast you had with President Moi, Prof?
Time is going. That was the past.
It was 88.
So that was before, that was
1988 and 1989.
Yeah, that was way before the special branch had been following up on your,
I became,
when you were a lecturer.
I was elected 1991. Moi actually became a true dictator in the sense of the term after 1991. Okay. That's when he went for his enemies.
I think there's a lot of revisionism that happens in this country. One thing that I want to disagree with.
You'll have the word, Ahmed, don't worry.
Yeah. Ahmed will have the word. President Kibaki changed this country practically overnight.
Absolutely correct.
Yes, and you can do it.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what I was going to say.
10 years.
No. He didn't do it in 10 years.
No.
But in the 10th year, he was completely ineffectual.
Yes.
In fact, Kibaki's second term was a disaster.
Yeah.
Was a disaster because he was a pathetic politician.
Yeah, I said that before.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a pathetic politician.
Agreed.
But he was good with the economy.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was good with the economy, and he knew what needed to be fixed when he came into office. And practically overnight, he did change things. So you can actually change things overnight. So that's what I would put out there. And then the other thing that I would then say, and I think it needs to be said and said again, is that we risk turning the moment we are in into another Kanu moment. Every time we start, painting people with a broad brush and saying Kagwanja is against this government because he's Kikuyu, and because this government is not Kikuyu, or that he supported Uhuru because Uhuru was from his ethnic, we risk wasting this moment and turning it into another Kanu moment. Yeah. So I think we must focus. And focus on the issues and the issues alone. That a government is elected to ensure people have education, as we have said, to ensure people have a health system that works, to ensure there's security, to ensure there's infrastructure that facilitates development, and that the people will do the rest for themselves.
Right. Good.
Well, Mr. Atwoli is, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Mr. Atwoli.
Yes, Mr. Atwoli, yes.
Oh, we sampled the feedback.
It's Professor Atwoli.
My name is Lukoye.
Lukoye.
Yeah.
I keep mixing up with another guy called Atwoli.
Yeah, he's a relative
He's
of
another
mine.
guy.
He's a relative. Yeah.
Now, I've always stood for this maxim that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Mr. Ruto has added one, despite the people. It's appalling, and I'm going to call this our president out for this because I was a standing member of the Central Committee of the Orange Democratic Movement, as you know, and I'm appalled at my former leader, Captain, the effective Prime Minister of this country today, in this big, what is it called, big government? Broad-based government.
Big-bottomed.
Yeah. Now, in 2027, we know what the results are going to be. I have predicted things here. I'm a senior. Professor Maxwell is my junior at the university. And I predicted things in here, and they have happened. And I just want to predict something about myself, that I have been consistent about my political economy from the very beginning, from Kibaki. And I know that President Kibaki has been probably the greatest leader we had in this country. He was terrible. I've said this before here, that he was a terrible politician, but a great at the economy. I think that President Ruto came in as a law and order president. I think President Ruto doesn't have the advisors he needs on the economy. He doesn't have the advisors he needs on the law. He doesn't. All the people who are with him are yes people. They are people who are scared of him. And he cannot be challenged by anybody in that group. Okay. And unless we in the media, in the public debate, stand up for the citizens of this country, we will be lost in this country, in this region, Mr. Ayub. There are many countries that are getting lost. We are not going to allow Kenya to get lost because of false starts. Standing by with the feedback, but Prof, your last word.
I think my last word is this. This goes to all my seniors who are here. One thing for certain, that economic transformation cannot be precipitous. It can only be incremental. It takes time. It will take time. I think give this current political administration its own time, you will see the transformation that will come, however way, before 2027. Thank you so much.
Let's sample the feedback, and here is what you have sent on X, formerly Twitter. The hashtag is CitizenTV. The SMS code is 22422 at CitizenTV Kenya and at Ayub Dukat. Ahmed, you can turn around.
The difference between being against the government.
MC says elections in Kenya have become a matter of life and death for the political class, not because they want to serve the people, but because they see politics as a shortcut to amass wealth. Why is it that a political office is more lucrative than entrepreneurship? Yes. Until we fix that imbalance, public service will remain a get-rich-quick scheme, not a calling to serve. Frank Orinde says the roadmap to 2027, the real test isn't just timelines. It's whether the IEBC is truly independent and if political players are willing to conduct themselves with decorum. For a credible election, leaders must shun violence, tribalism, and reckless rhetoric. Lekishan Laban says the new IEBC inherits a nation on age, youth unrest, tribal rhetoric, and rigging fears ahead of the general elections. Demand one thing, a credible, transparent election that rebuilds public trust and avoids further national instability. Kenya is in your hands. Sheila Sweden says Kenya is grappling with the solvable challenges, yet national focus remains fixated on politics and elections. Leadership must shift gears towards real solutions and service delivery. This status quo cannot continue. Babu Michael says as the new IEBC commissioners assume office, their biggest challenge will be to restore public trust, something that has been lost far too long when it comes to credible elections. For years, many Kenyans have doubted the integrity of election results. Now is the time to rebuild confidence through transparency, accountability, and independence. Gode Barasawere says, a time where capitation is given to non-existent schools, education system is confusing and corruption is so rampant across all government sectors. Why is this administration so focused on elections while ignoring such challenges? Again, Lekishan says Ruto rose to power by attacking dynasties, yet he was politically bred by them. His bottom-up agenda raised hopes but failed promises, has resulted into protests, and now has a dynasty. 2027 may not be dynasties versus hustlers, but citizens versus broken promises.
So they all agree with me, Ayub, all of them. Everything that I've said here, the public agrees with.
Many thanks for your time, Professor Peter Kagwanja, much appreciated. Professor Maxwell Miawa, Professor Lukoya Tuole, Ahmed Hashi.
Thank you so much. So a great show, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
We should all come back.
Yeah, and to discuss education.
Yes.
Of course, yeah.
Absolutely.
We can do that in a week's time.
Absolutely.
Many thanks, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Outstanding show.
Thank you
very much.
Up next is health and lifestyle.
Yeah.